Is this Burnley side the best the Championship has ever seen, or at least in recent memory? Well, today we are going to be putting that theory to the test, as we're going to compare Burnley this season with the previous 4 champions of the Championship. So the 4 sides we're going to be comparing this Burnley side to are the 21/22 Fulham side, the 2020/21 Norwich side, the 2019/20 Leeds side, and the 2017/18 Wolves side. I am aware that Norwich have won the Championship twice in that time period, but we're only going to be including one of their teams in this video just for the sake of a little bit of variety. And we're going to be putting each of those 5 Championship clubs based on those seasons in isolation up against each other in 8 different categories. From those categories we're going to give each club a score, and at the end of the video we will have our overall verdict on who out of those 5 is the best team in the Championship over these last 5 or so seasons. If you did go to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Your thoughts on Burnley this season would very much be welcomed down below. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. So jumping into the first category, we're going off goals per game, and unsurprisingly so, it is Fulham who come out on top of this category. They had Mitrovic in their side this season and were absolutely prolific from the start of the season to the end of it. Under Marco Silva, we've seen how they've gone to smash the Championship this time around, and averaging 2.3 goals per game. They're the only Championship side on this list to have scored over 100 goals over a full season, but hey, Burnley could still give them a run for their money come the end of the season. As things stand at the moment, Burnley are second in this regard. They've averaged 2 goals per game so far this season, which is really decent going when compared to these other sides. In third we've got Wolves with 1.8, then we've got Leeds with 1.7, and in last place we've got Norwich City, who average 1.6 goals per game during their most recent Championship triumph. However, it's not only about scoring goals but also keeping them out of the back of the net. We've also compared the goals conceded per game, and this goes ahead and pretty much flips the script from the last one really. We can see both Fulham and Burnley being at the bottom of this ranking in terms of being a little bit more leaky than some of those other sides, and maybe that's as a consequence of them being as attack heavy as they actually have been so far this season. So Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds were the best in this regard in terms of keeping things tight at the back and not conceding goals, only conceding 0.76 goals per game over an entire Championship season. In terms of what the maths actually works out on that one, Leeds only conceded 35 goals in 46 Championship matches over a season, which is absolutely staggering stuff. Next up then it's Norwich with 0.78, then we've got Wolves 0.85, followed by Burnley and Fulham making up the rest. I also think that XG per 90 gives us an interesting indication of how many chances a team is creating. Obviously goals tells us one story, but either a team can be, amazingly clinical and have loads of goal scores, or they can be a little bit wasteful and actually create a lot of chances. That was certainly the case for Leeds United under Marcelo Bielsa. Thinking about, Patrick Bamford up front that season, did score a lot of goals but also missed a hell of a lot as well. And in terms of an overall cohesive unit, they were absolutely sublime that year, and I think that the XG per 90 numbers really goes ahead and shows that. 2.16 XG per 90 they accumulated on average in the Championship, which is really staggering stuff. Second place we've got Fulham. Mentioned before how attack heavy they were under Marco Silva with Mitrovic in that side. Norwich coming in third place despite being the lowest scoring out of these 3 sides. They were the third most creative with an XG of 1.95, and then making up the rest we've actually got Burnley in 4th place here, 1.65 in terms of their XG per 90. They've been way more clinical than their XG would have you believe so far this season. Burnley have scored 2 goals per game, whereas their XG has only been 1.65, which hints towards how prolific they've actually been in the final third and clinical, despite not creating the best chances compared to some of these other sides. And then Wolves are in last place there with an XG of 1.56. In terms of the modern game, possession I think is more important than ever. If we look at the top sides in each domestic league, will regularly see whoever is coming out on top is absolutely crushing it in terms of the possession numbers. Certainly in terms of England, with Pep Guardiola going ahead and having an influence on English football and things like that, definitely the case with Vincent Kompany in at Burnley, and that can be reflected here with these huge possession numbers compared to previous champions of the Championship. Burnley absolutely storming it in this regard with an average of 63% possession this season. Fulham not all too far behind with Leeds as well, both averaging 60 and 61%, absolutely dominating the ball. In fourth place we then got Norwich with 58%, and coming in last place we've got Wolves with an average possession of 53%. So not really dominating the ball, Wolves under Nuno, like some of these other sides were. A little bit more counter-attacking perhaps, obviously played with that back five, I think, Ruben Neves switching it between play and things like that. But yeah, interesting reading there. Wolves 10% less possession on average than Burnley when they were champions. We are now 31 game weeks into this Championship season, and this right here was how the previous champions were looking at this stage of the season. 31 game weeks in, this is how many points they each had. So Burnley coming in second on this ranking. They're currently on 69 points. Obviously couldn't get that win over the line against Watford in the end, but did rescue a late dramatic point. As things stand, they're currently projected to finish with 102 points in the Championship this season. But what's interesting is Wolves are actually projected to finish on 105 points on game week 31 in the season that they went on to win the Championship. They did tail off ever so slightly from that point onwards. Obviously in the end finished on 99 points, which is still amazing. But I think it does go to show that if you don't have one or two sides really pushing you right to the wire, it's only natural that you will regress a little bit. What's most interesting here is Leeds are way off the rest of the pack in terms of points at this stage of the season. On game week 31 under Bielsa, when they went ahead and won the league, they weren't actually top of the Championship at this point. West Brom was sitting above them. They went on a miraculous run in the final few months of the season though, really picked up the pace, and eventually they went on to finish the season with 93 points, but in game week 31 only had 55 points to their name, which was interesting. I think how many shots you take per game is also an interesting indication of how entertaining you as a side are to watch, and it is Bielsa's Leeds who do come out on top of this category, and Burnley actually ranking bottom out of the previous champions for this statistic, only taking 12.6 shots per game. We see the way that Kompany likes to build up play with this Burnley side. They're a little bit more sort of thoughtful, I suppose, in possession, won't have as many pop shots maybe as some of these other sides, you know, thinking about how calm this Burnley side are on the ball maybe to that Bielsa's Leeds side, which is just, you know, crazy pinball football going on all around. But it worked for Leeds. 16.4 shots they had on average per game compared to Burnley, who take just 12.6 shots per game. On the flip side of that though, it is also important that your side isn't facing all too many shots per game, as obviously that will allow more chances to the opposition to go ahead and get in at you, and this is where Burnley have done really well so far this season. And this one, I'd suggest, probably does relate to that possession statistic before. You know, Burnley don't give away many chances to the opposition, mostly because the opposition barely has the ball and any opportunities to go ahead and do that. They do rank second in this statistic though. What I thought was really interesting was Fulham are actually top for this one, only allowing their opponents 8.8 shots per game. When we think back to that Marco Silva Fulham side, I don't think anyone particularly associates it with it being, you know, rock solid at the back or anything like that because of how many goals they actually scored, but they did not give a lot away to the opposition. Burnley ranking second for that. It's Norwich who are coming in at the bottom of the pile for that one under Daniel Farke, 11.2 shots they allow per game. This is the big one though, and the last criteria which we will be judging each of these previous champions by, and that's points per game. And as we can see right now, it is Burnley who do reign above everyone else and currently projected to pick up over 100 points this season. Now I must stress that Burnley do have an advantage here over the rest of the sides because I'm judging those previous four champions over the course of an entire Championship season, where I'm only taking into consideration 31 game weeks when coming up with the numbers for Burnley. But even so, it is really interesting reading of, you know, if Burnley are to keep the pace of what they're currently producing right now until the end of the season, they will have been the best Championship outfit in terms of points per game that we've seen in the Championship for quite some time. Wolves Wolves ranking second in that regard. Obviously, they ended up finishing the championship season with 99 points, with points per game of 2.15. Norwich after that with 2.11, Leeds with 2.02, and Fulham last up there with 1.96. Do you think Burnley can continue to average that points per game between now and the end of the season? Or even, do you think they can up it ever so slightly and start to challenge Reading for that 106 point tally, which has been untouched since they went ahead and broke that record? Let me know down below, because I think it would be a really interesting one. But guys, there we have it. There were all 8 categories which I've judged these championship sides by. Some great teams of years gone by, and how Burnley go ahead and stack up against them. To go ahead and rank each of these teams, I've done a little bit of a scoring system for this one. So if a side comes first of any of the rankings, I've given them 5 points, second 4 points, third 3 points, fourth 2 points, and last just 1 point. I've then gone ahead and added up all of the scores, so each team gets a score out of 40, and here are my findings for those scores. So based on all of that criteria that we've gone through in today's video, coming in 5th place, we've got Daniel Farke's Norwich side coming in with a score of 19 out of 40. Norwich, absolutely brilliant side to watch, obviously under Farke that season, thinking back to Pukki, Buendia linking up, but compared to these previous champions, they are coming in 5th place. In 4th place, we have Nuno's Wolves side. Interestingly enough, a team who picks up more points than any of these other sides, but the underlying numbers did go against them in some of these metrics in terms of, you know, goals per game, XG per 90, and things like that. Other sides just stacked up a little bit better than they did. They picked up 21 points out of a possible 40 in this ranking. It gets incredibly close around the top 3, but coming in 3rd place, we have Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds side, who picked up a grand total of 26 points out of a possible 40. Bielsa's Leeds that season were absolutely exceptional, and what was most amazing was the fact that, you know, they weren't top of the table on game week 31. You know, some of these other sides were already runaway winners by that point. Bielsa's Leeds side weren't that, but when they did properly click into their flow, oh my god, they were a team to behold. But then coming in as our joint winners, we actually have Burnley and Fulham, who are tied for points on this scoring system, both picking up 27 points in the end. Now, what I do find interesting about this is that if Burnley are to continue their projected points from now until the end of the season, they'll have more points than any of these other championship sides, and Fulham actually had the fewest points in terms of a champion in recent years. Despite that, Fulham's underlying metrics were just absolutely superb under Marco Silva, and that's what really drags them up in this ranking. So despite the fact that they didn't get as many points as some of these other sides, the sheer amount of goals they scored, the entertainment factor, the XG they produced, and everything along those lines really drags them up in this ranking. But with Burnley sitting above some ridiculously good championship sides in years gone by, I think that paints the picture right now of just how serious this Burnley side are to be taken, and even going forward, perhaps next season into the Premier League, just what they could achieve. If we think about how, you know, Leeds have solidified themselves, how good Fulham have been recently, how much of a run Wolves have had in the Premier League, this Burnley side right now is ranking above any of them, and that really is a testament to Vincent Kompany and the work that's been done at that club. But guys, there we have it. That will wrap it up for today's video. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like if you would like to see any other videos like this where we compare current championship sides of previous sides of years gone by. Do show your support on today's video, guys. Apart from that, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.